Hello respected viewers, I'm George from Ireland. So this is a video about the forthcoming Batley and Spen by-election because I've had a request for a video on this very topic, and being that sort of chap, I am acceding to the request by one of my millions of faithful subscribers. So Batley and Spen, in case you don't know, is in the fair Shire of York. So Yorkshire, England's largest county in area. It's not saying it's the most populous, because the previous Member of Parliament, Tracy Brabin, a Labourite, has been elected Mayor of West Yorkshire. So you know we've got these directly elected mayors in certain portions of the United Kingdom, and it's not strictly for a city, it can be for a county. Yorkshire's so big it's divided into north, south, west and east ridings, although East Yorkshire is usually known as Humberside since the River Humber bisects it. Anyway, so Tracy Brabin's new office will also invest in the powers of a police and crime commissioner. This was David Cameron's brainwave about 10 years ago, that there'll be police and crime commissioners for different regions of England and Wales, and they don't directly control the police, they have some sway over them. There's a non-police officer, a politician, who's trying to direct police policy, but no, they don't have the power to say arrest that person but release that person. Is it worth it? I think not, but there we go. An attempt to revivify local government, because you go back 20 years and more when interest in local government was very low and there's very low turnout. So he's trying to reinvigorate politics at a county level. So anyway, this is the fourth by-election of the current Parliament. This is the 58th Parliament, but I think perhaps I mean Parliament of the United Kingdom of Great Britain and Northern Ireland. I say Northern Ireland, but obviously Northern Ireland has been distinct from Ireland since 1921. I think probably 58th since the Act of Union took effect in 1801. So Batley and Spen is at the foot of the Pennines, that range of mountains which is the spine of northern England, with Yorkshire to the east and Lancashire to the west. So it was a fairly safe Labour seat. Now, the Conservatives held it under Margaret Thatcher. Labour retook it in 1997. So anyway, there are a lot of people who are of Asiatic ethnicity, particularly Indian, less so Pakistani. The British Indians there largely hail from Gujarat. Now, I hope I'm not being a racialist in saying Indian and Pakistani. You don't have to say British Indian and British Pakistani, because they're not all British. You might be a resident of the United Kingdom, but not actually a British citizen, might not want to be. Remember, it takes at least 5 years. And as you may recall, Commonwealth citizens are entitled to cast a ballot in UK parliamentary elections if they're legally resident in the United Kingdom, including resident for the purpose of education. So not all Commonwealth citizens in the world, otherwise the entire population of Nigeria can vote in UK elections. You've got to actually be legally living in the UK. Anyway, so it's about 30% Asian, and now the Asian community was overwhelmingly Labour, less strongly Labour than they used to, particularly the British Indian community, especially as they've got more affluent, feeling more accepted, seeing more brown faces on the Tory benches. Okay, so the Liberal Democrats are fairly feeble in this constituency, apart from an area called Cleckheaton. Anyway, so we'll cut to the chase. So Labour is behind in the polls nationally. They had a woeful poll not long ago with them trailing the Conservatives by 15%. Now, the Conservative Party, they rather mishandled the whole coronavirus situation. I mean, Bojo's not been a very apt Prime Minister, and Theresa May was no great administratrix of the United Kingdom either. But, all right, the vaccination programme has gone quite well, mainly down to the doctors and nurses, probably. So anyway, they're well ahead. Sir Keir Starmer would seem to tick many of the right boxes. He's old enough, but not too old, distinguished career in public service, fairly effective public speaker, no skeletons in his cupboard, cerebral, prime ministerial, but somehow just doesn't connect. Not very affable, little lacking in charisma. Is he bland? Perhaps I'm being cruel in saying that. But anyway, so a new by-election is coming forth. There's a chap called Bob Buxton who heads the Yorkshire Party, and he's seeking the election there. In case you don't know much about Yorkshire, the people of Yorkshire tend to have an exceptionally inflated view of their own county, calling it God's own county and all the rest of it. Yorkshire, it is really quite large. It's got a population larger than Wales, for example. They're not quite as large as Scotland, but obviously the major cities in Yorkshire are not involved here. That's Sheffield, Leeds, Bradford. Even York itself is fairly big with 200,000 people. Now, the Workers' Party of Britain was founded by George Galloway not long ago. So George Galloway, he was the Labour MP for Glasgow Hill Head for quite a few years. He famously defeated Roy Jenkins there. Roy Jenkins had been the founder of the Social Democratic Party. Roy Jenkins had a very distinguished career as a Labour politician before that, Home Secretary, was he Chartered Exchequer, and could easily have been a Labour Prime Minister, but seen as a Judas by Labour. So Galloway was a sort of hero in Labour circles, but he later split with Tony Blair over Iraq. He was defenestrated from the party, set up his own party, the Respect Party. That went for about 10 years. And he was an MP briefly for Bethnal Green and Bow, later for Bradford North. He curries favour, pun intended, with the Pakistani community in particular. But anyway, so he is far left, anti-Zionist. But so he's putting forward a candidate there. You may have heard of Jo Cox, that Labour MP who was murdered during the Brexit referendum. So her sister, Kim Leadbeater, is the Labour standard bearer there. Anyway, so because it would seem like pretty much a shoe-in as a Labour candidate, but you'll see that the things do not augur well for Labour. If you look at the tea leaves, it's going to be a tough fight in their hands. I think Labour will just make it, but I say think because I'm not very confident about that. So it's sort of on a knife edge. Anyway, who else? Obviously, the Liberal Democrats are standing. Britain First is standing. This white nationalist group led by Jada Franson. This woman, she's standing. She stood in several by-elections without success. The Greens have a candidate as well, the Christian People's Alliance, and the Social Democratic Party. So when the SDP merged with the Liberals from the Liberal Democrats, I think a few of the SDP has never accepted that. Well, Lord Owen, who was their leader, he tried to wind up the party, but some people have revived the label Social Democratic Party, the SDP. So they're an absolutely tiny party. So last time Labour got 43% of the vote, the Conservatives got 36% of the vote. That's almost a safe Labour seat, and the Liberal Democrats got a mere 5% of the vote, and there were several of the minor candidates getting almost 17% of the vote between them. However, opinion polls, some of them are showing the Conservatives ahead by up to 6%. So Keir Starmer has been there, Sir Keir Starmer, the Labour leader, to campaign, but the leader of Her Majesty's most loyal opposition, again, doesn't seem to be getting through to people that well. Even Boris Johnson's gone there. There used to be a convention whereby Prime Ministers didn't campaign in by-elections. Tony Blair famously broke that one at Eddisbury in 1999, where the Conservatives very narrowly retained control of that seat. Blair was to improve. There were no such thing as no-go zones for there. Anyway, there are various local issues that people are considering, like the local police station being closed down. So that's it. I mean, I don't think the Workers' Party of Britain is going to get it. So for Britain, Anne-Marie Waters, that Irish woman who's a sort of secular campaigner, she's standing. Freedom Alliance, UKIP, yes, can you believe it? They're still around. Rejoin EU, they've got a candidate. The Heritage Party, the monster raving loony party with howling Lord Hope, an English Democrat, as an independent, and so on. Well, that's enough about this election. Okay, toodaloo.